Today we're going to be going to one of my favorite countries, Croatia. But unlike the boat bike tour that I took last fall, this time we're going to do multi-sport. We're going to hike, we're going to bike, we're going to paddle. It's a great adventure and I can't wait to share it with you. So let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. Today we're going to one of my favorite countries, Croatia, and I've asked Lesley to come on the show to tell us about her adventures with my affiliate, Active Adventures, who you've heard many times on this show because I'm a big fan of their company. And because they are one of my affiliates, they offer ATA listeners an exclusive discount code, ATA200, ATA200. They'll get you $200 off of any of their exciting adventures. So remember the code ATA200, or if you forget, you can always email me at kit@activetraveladventures.com for the promo code. They won't let me publish it, so you'll just hear it on the show and via email. Now let's get on with my interview with Lesley. I've asked Lesley to come on the program today to talk to us about one of my favorite countries, Croatia. And Lesley went with one of my affiliates, Active Adventures, and so she's doing a completely different trip than the boat bike tour that I did last year. So if you're interested in a multi-activity adventure, today's show is for you. Welcome to the program, Lesley. Thanks for coming on.
And thanks for having me.
I'd like to get a feel for who we're talking to before we get started. So would you mind telling us how you got into adventure travel in the first place?
I've always loved to travel, and I ran for a long time, and then I bought a bike with the goal to do triathlons and got into bicycle vacations, and then kind of discovered that there are multi-sport vacations as well, which is how I ended up on this trip.
So is this your first multi-sport beyond the bike trips?
Yes, all the other ones have been specifically biking daily. You know, you may have a day where you did a small hike in the morning before getting on the bike, but most have been just biking. I did actually have a multi-sport vacation planned for Alaska, but then COVID happened, so that got canceled. So this is indeed the first.
Why Croatia? There's all these countries in the world. What was the appeal there?
It looked like a beautiful country. The coastlines, all the pictures are so gorgeous. And then I love Europe anyway, so why not?
So did you go by yourself or with others, or how did all that work?
I went with a couple that I met several years ago when I did a bike vacation to Ireland, which I actually went by myself, and then met this couple there and we became friends. And since then we've been to Italy, Denmark, Hawaii, and Croatia together.
Cool. And that happens a lot because you do bond. I mean, you're almost self-selected to like the people that are in your group.
Yes. And I've lucked out, I guess, because every trip that I've been on, all the people have been great.
Yeah, I found the exact same thing. You're not going to get wimps and you're not going to get prima donnas or high maintenance people are not going to choose to go get sweaty and dirty to explore country.
Right. That's the hope anyway, right?
So on your trip to Croatia, you start in Split and work your way to Dubrovnik. Do I understand that right?
Yep.
Did you get a chance to explore Split at all?
We got there a day or two early. We had one full day there before the trip started. Stayed at this cute little place. It was hard to find, but it was an amazing place, kind of right in the center of the old town. And we did some touristy stuff just to kind of explore before the tour started.
So you meet with the group, and Split's great. I mean, let me ask you this too. Between Split and Dubrovnik, did you have a favorite?
I think everywhere that we went, Dubrovnik was the busiest and most touristy. So for that reason, I would say the other places ranked higher for me, but Dubrovnik was also lovely.
So for people trying to figure out where to add a little extra time, and ideally add at both ends of the trip, because they are beautiful cities. But like you said, they do get touristy.
Yeah.
And one of the nice things about this trip is because you're often off the tourism path.
Right.
By doing the things outdoors, which is nice.
Yes, very nice.
So let's talk about your first day. I see that you're taking a ferry over to Var Island. Can you tell us a little bit about what y'all did that day?
It was about a 2-hour ferry ride over, and we kind of had all met one another and kind of, where are you from? Is this your first trip? Kind of introductory stuff. Met the guides for the first time then, and they told us a little about themselves and kind of how they got into tour leading. And then, we had some time to spend just chatting with one another until we actually got to our destination. And then we got off and got on the bikes pretty quickly, and we're starting our cycling adventure.
And try to describe for people what that water looks like over there.
Oh, it's beautiful turquoise blue that exists probably.
Yeah, and it's crystal clear. You can see to the bottom. I don't care how deep it is. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so on your ride, also, it looks like you're also under as I recall, there's a bunch of pine tree, so you're like shaded as you're going along the coastline, as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very pretty. Do you have any other highlights of that day?
We stopped at this little place for delicious gelato. And there was a church there that you could kind of walk to and go in and visit. That was really pretty. And there was a couple on the trip that really enjoyed looking at churches. So one of the ladies, her name was Lori, she had actually went and kind of discovered this and then came back and told us. And then a bunch of us went to check it out. And then just out on the open roads, everything's beautiful regardless of where you looked. And then we had lunch that day at this hilltop restaurant, and the views were amazing. I think I included a picture. I'm on a swing and you're just looking down at the water and everything below. Absolutely gorgeous. And the food and the wine there was superb.
And very inexpensive, as I recall. So it's delicious and really affordable wine.
Yes.
Very nice. And so the first day, it looks like you can bike up to about 27 miles, about 44 kilometers, and they're rating it like easy to moderately strenuous. Did some people have e-bikes, or was that an option?
This trip, I don't think anybody had an e-bike. I think it is an option, but I think we all had regular bikes, if I remember correctly.
Okay. And how big was your group?
Maybe about 10 or 12 of us.
That sounds like a typical active adventures group size. What was the age range, would you say?
There was a couple that had multiple children. They were all, children, but all of adult age. Early, like late teens, early 20s, up to the oldest person was like retirement age, newly retired. So mid 60s.
And did everybody kind of get along, or did they stay in their little groups, or did people kind of mix and match and just kind of enjoy the tour together? How does that work?
A little bit of both. The family kind of would venture out and people would kind of do their own things. But then after dinner, some of us would get together for like a after dinner drink and just sit and socialize. So a little mix of both.
Do you feel comfortable that a solo person would have been welcomed in the group?
Oh, there was a solo person.
But it was a girl or a boy?
It was a boy. His name was Kevin.
So was Kevin like embraced by the group, where he was always with people if he wanted to be, if he chose to be, right? So, because I found their trips to be really good. I travel solo.
Definitely embrace. And I was there with my friends that are a couple but I was by myself per se, not coupled up or part of a family on a vacation. So we would hang out a lot as well.
After Hvar, what happens next? What do you do the next day?
The next day was a day for kayaking.
Tell us about that.
That may have ranked as one of my favorite days. We just kayaked out around some islands off the coast of Far and found this little place and got off of our kayaks, and there were rocks where you could jump in the water and go for a swim. And so we did that and then got back in our kayaks and paddled around. And then after that, we ended in Hvar. We stayed a couple of nights there. And that evening, we actually went to a chef's home where he told us about how he plants all his produce and locally sources the things that he can't grow, and cooked a multi-course meal for us in his own home, which was a very special treat.
Very nice. Do you remember what you had or some of the things you had?
I can't remember the first course. It was sort of like a salsa type dish, very delicious. And then the main course was tuna. That was very good as well. And it had like the side dishes were like potatoes and like a Swiss chard with fava beans, I believe. And then a cake with chocolate icing for dessert, everything homemade.
Most meals are included on this trip. How was the food?
Oh, fantastic.
And was it a variety? So, or was it all Croatian cuisine, or did you have like a variety of foods to eat?
A variety, but lots of seafood on the menus, of course, with it being coastal.
Right. And the seafood there.
Yeah, that's what I opted for most places.
When you say opted, that means you had some choice?
Oh, yeah. There would be a menu, with several selections for each course.
Very nice. Did you get a chance to try some of the black risotto?
Yes, it did have that. It was quite tasty.
It is. It doesn't look very pretty, but it's delicious.
It is.
And so you mentioned you were in Hvar for a few nights. Tell us about your lodging overall.
The lodging everywhere was great. Couldn't really have asked for anything better. Nice hotels, beautiful views. So I was happy with all of that. Sometimes you go on these trips and you're in smaller places that are less touristy. Sometimes some of the accommodations may not be that great, but all of the accommodations on this trip were fantastic.
Active does one thing that I like, and maybe you were able to take advantage of this. If you go solo and don't mind being paired with the same sex roommate, there's no solo supplement. But if you choose to have your own room, you can pay a solo supplement to guarantee your own room.
Yes.
I don't know if you knew that or not, or so did you share a room or did you have your own place?
I said that I would be happy to share a room, but there was no single female to share a room with. So I ended up with my own room anyway. But it was nice that you didn't have to pay that supplement, because having to pay that single supplement can add a significant amount of money to the cost that already is not cheap.
Right. And Europe, the single supplements are very expensive because everything is booked per room, assuming 2 people. So you're always going to have to pay double just about if you want that whole room to yourself.
Right.
So I like that Active does that even here. That's very nice.
Yes.
So it sounds like the kayaking was a lot of fun. And now the next day you're going to one of my favorite places.
When we started the day, it was actually pretty windy, and we were like, oh gosh, how's this going to go? Then as the day went on, the wind died down, the sun came out, and it ended up being a really nice day. But we had a fairly significant climb up, but the view once you got to the top was very rewarding. You're just looking down into that turquoise blue water in a little bay that was just gorgeous. And then I think we did kind of bike like a little out and back portion just right along the water's edge that day. And that evening, we went to this restaurant. I don't remember the name of it, but the way that they prepare their fish is on a charcoal grill, which I haven't really had much charcoal grilled fish in my life. And they brought it out on a platter and filleted it there, right there at the table. And it was some of the best fish I've ever eaten. And I grew up, my dad was a commercial fisherman. So I grew up in North Carolina near the coast and have had my fair share of seafood. But that fish was unbelievable. I wish I had written down the name of the restaurant or taken a picture of a menu or something, but I did not.
So I want to ask you too, do you have any free time during the tour so that you can do what you want to do? I see on this day, if you wanted to, you can visit the home of Marco Polo, St. Mark's Cathedral. They've got some museums and just wandering about, or is everything scheduled all day, or do you have some free time, or how does that work?
There's a little bit of free time, not where you have like half the day free normally, but I would say in between the time where you finish the bike and get to your lodging until dinner time, there's time to kind of walk around a little bit and see stuff on your own or do whatever you like. If you want to take a nap or meet up with other people in the group for a before dinner drink or whatever, there is some downtime.
Right. And also, I think because you're in the same town multiple days, which is nice because you're not packing up all the time. You had after dinner too, if you wanted to. You're probably tired, but you had the option.
Yes.
How many different lodgings did you stay in? Do you recall?
2. I like that you're not moving every single day, which is nice because then even though you're still technically living out of a suitcase, at least you're not, okay, I got to unpack and get what I need for today or tonight and then repack because I have to go again in the morning.
So we did some biking. Now the next day, it looks like we're doing some hiking for a change. Over in, I'm going to say this wrong, Zernova or Zenovo?
Yeah, good luck. Bad with the pronunciation too.
All right. Well, how was the hike?
It was nice. I guess say maybe it shouldn't be called a hike because everybody's definition of that could be different, I think it was more of like a nature walk, I would say, than like I think of hiking. I think of doing some big grand climb. It wasn't like that. It was just a nice little nature hike through caves. There were some rock scrambles to kind of go through, but it wasn't anything like super strenuous. Pretty much anyone could do this, which is nice.
On a scale of 1 to 5, how difficult would you say the overall activities were for this trip? 5 being hardest, 5 being like climbing super hard.
I would say like a 2.
Okay. All right. Is it a trip that you require training for, do you think? Or if as long as you're reasonably fit, you should be okay?
Oh, as long as you're reasonably fit, you'll be perfectly fine. I think the major thing with any biking trip is your butt just has to get used to sitting. And if you don't typically ride bikes or you don't prepare for that in some kind of way, you might experience a little more discomfort than you would if you were better prepared.
Definitely. In fact, on mine, because mine was strictly a biking trip in Croatia, I brought my own little gel seat to be on the safe side.
Oh, yeah.
Now I just left that for whoever's the next one so they get lucky. So let's talk a little bit more about the landscape, because it sounds like the day that you're doing your nature walk, it sounds really pretty. You're in some oak forest. You get to see some of the Dolomitic rock formation. So can you describe what you're seeing?
Lots of different trees, olive trees, fruit trees, lots of flowers with little, cutouts where you can see views of the water.
Is it pretty?
Very pretty.
I thought Croatia was a stunning country. Beautiful. All right. And then on your last active day, you're doing a buggy safari. What the heck is that?
You're in like a little ATV type thing. Looks sort of like I guess if the equivalent of what do you know what like a gator is? Like a kind of jeepish looking apparatus.
Yes.
Yep. So we got in those and went down to Lombarda Beach, which is the only sandy beach there. And they said that they had snorkel equipment, but there were really no fish to see with how warm the water was at that time. But that day we did end up going to this local home grower's home where, he made all types of things like his own candied almonds, different little dried fruit slices, little fruit-filled pancakes, liqueurs, wines. And so we had a tasting, a sampling of pretty much everything he had to offer. And then he sold them as well, so you could buy souvenirs to take home, which many of us did, which is nice that we were able to support a local business. The other cool thing about that is his wife is really into pottery. And so there was just all these little things that she had made everywhere around that were really cute. Animals. She had like swim trunks, slippers, pots for flowers, just lots of really cute stuff.
Nice. Did you have any conversation barriers? Could they speak English or did you just have to pantomime, or how did that work?
He spoke pretty good English.
And also you have a guide.
Yeah.
So how was the guide?
The guides were phenomenal, both from the area, which is nice because not all tours are that way. So it's nice having someone from the area that, yes, speaks the language, could recommend, the best restaurants to go to, knew what were the best wines that were local to that area for us to have at dinner and sample and everything. So, and they were great.
And they know the history too.
Their names were Marco and Daniel.
Now, I like to having the local guides because they give you a better insight, and that is a local connection. And so somebody that you can pretty much talk to about anything about the whole country, whatever country you're visiting. So it's great to have great guides. And that's one thing I think Active does a good job of selecting the guides that do their tours.
Yes.
You also talked about weather. When did you go? It looks like you can do this trip mid-June to like late September, and then everything's about shutting down late September. So you got to be aware of that.
We were there the beginning of June.
Okay. So you were at the beginning of the season. I was there at the end of the season. Had the crowds started coming there yet? Did you see, was it busy yet in Split and Dubrovnik? Because that's where you're going to see the people.
Split didn't seem overly busy to me in comparison to Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik, there were massive amounts of people everywhere, as you would expect.
So it's probably a good idea. I mean, you can go any time of the year, but trying to hit the shoulder seasons of the season is nice.
Yeah.
because we were there in October and a lot of things were closed when we were there. So I'd say bump it back, either they, like I said, they run this tours like mid-June to the end of September, right in the beginning of October. Try to get towards the edges of that to avoid the crowds in Dubrovnik, if you plan on spending time in Dubrovnik.
Yeah.
During the rest of the tour itself, was it crowded because you're kind of off the beaten path?
Other places we went didn't seem very, very crowded to me. I don't know if that's like the normal amount of people or if there are different times of the year where it's busier than it was at that time, but it didn't seem packed out like the other bigger touristy destinations, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, the cruise ship stopped.
Yeah,
the cruise ship stopped there. That's what makes those places so crowded. So they've got to go through a lot more effort to go to the smaller islands.
Yeah, which I guess the cruise ship tourism is something that's just happened there like in the last handful of years or so. So, the tour guides kind of talked about, you're coming into Dubrovnik on the ferry, and yes, you go by cruise ships, and they're like, oh, like tourism's great, but now this is what you got to look at, where it used to not be like that. And so, you pull in to dock so you can get off, and you're just kind of like, oh, well, that sucks, but people like to cruise too. So
it sounds like the best advice we can give folks is, if you plan to spend a lot of time in Split and Dubrovnik or other places in Croatia, plan to do that in the shoulder season. But if it doesn't make a difference, if your main thing is just to go there for the adventure part, then anytime during the summer is fine. The average in the summer gets up to like 70 degrees at night, during the day, and like 57 at night. So it's very pleasant all summer long, unlike a lot of places in Europe that get too hot. Does that sound like a fair assessment?
Yes, agreed.
Is there any advice that you would give people on either something they should make sure they bring, or something you say, oh, I wish I'd known this before I went, that we can learn from your mistakes?
I think they do a pretty good job of a lot of these companies, Active Adventures included, have like a packing list with suggestions. I have not been one to take my own helmet, pedals, saddle. I just have always used whatever the company provides and have been okay with that. So people definitely don't need to go out and buy those things if they're not cyclists in their daily life, I guess. I would say layers are always a good thing to have, so you're kind of prepared for any type of weather. Make sure you bring a rain jacket, sunglasses. But aside from that, they do a pretty good job with their packing list and making sure you kind of got all the bases covered.
You mentioned the one windy day. How was your weather overall?
Other than that day, it was sunny and warm.
Yeah, and I was blessed with perfect weather. Although I heard the week before it was very windy, but it seems like the weather seems to be pretty nice down there for both of us to have such good luck.
Yes.
So what was your overall impression of Croatia?
I loved it. The scenery is beautiful. The people are lovely. The food was spectacular. And I will probably return to hit islands that I didn't get to visit on the first go round.
Yeah, it's one of the few countries too I think I would like to go back to as well. It is just a stunningly beautiful country, and particularly if you get away from those two cities we keep mentioning, it's not that crowded. The rest of it, of course, I was there towards the end of COVID, but I mean, I went places that it was beautiful. So if you do have the opportunity, allow some extra time to do some exploration, because it's just a stunning country. It's very easy to get around. I got around by bus. So once I was off my tour, I could just putz around, do whatever I wanted to do. It was wonderful.
Exactly.
And you sound pretty well traveled, Lesley. How does this trip compare to some other trips you've taken?
I would say they're all kind of similar, and what they advertise is what you get. A lot of them, most meals are included. You do have a couple of meals on your own, but that's nice because you can take suggestions from the tour guides are from locals and kind of explore a place that isn't part of the itinerary. The thing that I really liked about Active Adventures is that there were some little add-ins that we didn't know were coming. One day they arranged for us to have the opportunity to go out on paddle boards if we were interested in that. And a lot of us took that opportunity and went out for, an hour or two, which was super nice because that was not part of the itinerary. We didn't know that was going to be an option for us. And then two, they gave us Active Adventures hat. They gave us beach towels. And then they surprised us waiting in our rooms the day that we went to that gentleman's home and tried all those things. They actually purchased either a bottle of liqueur or olive oil for us to take home, which was really nice and unexpected.
And so the tour ends in Dubrovnik. What happens when you get to Dubrovnik?
They included a walking tour that was actually awesome. And then after that, you just kind of said goodbye. And some people just went to the airport and some people stayed there. So there wasn't, we didn't do much there. It was just kind of the end point.
Anything else that we need to know or that you'd like to tell us about your Croatia trip?
I think we've pretty much hit the highlight. I would definitely say if you're thinking about going, just say yes and go. You won't regret it, I don't think.
I'm sure. So, Lesley, do you have any other travel plans in the future? Something to look forward to?
Yes, I actually had such a great experience with Active Adventures that I reserved a spot next year to do Ecuador and the Galapagos with them.
Very cool. I was supposed to go actually last month, but I had to postpone it for different reasons. So I'm sure you're going to have a blast with that. It's a stunning trip.
Oh, yes. There were actually people on the Croatia trip that there was a couple that had actually been with Active Adventures and recommended it. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll have to have you back when you do that. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the program. Thank you so much for your time. And it's been great having you.
Yes, thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed our visit to Croatia today. I need to get back there. I would love to see it from the perspective of the water, of kayaking, or even paddleboarding, which is something I've never done. Love to try that in the future, as well as hiking some of the mountains. I had the opportunity myself to do the biking, but you get a completely different perspective from down in that water, and I cannot emphasize enough how crystal clear blue that water is, and you've got these white, beautiful cliffs and the red clay roofs. It's just a beautiful country. And as Lesley said, the people are beautiful. The food is outstanding. The wine is outstanding. You're sure to have a great time. Oh, and I should mention too, Croatia is pretty affordable. So it's a great place to go in Europe without spending a whole lot of money. And I do recommend, if you do go, please go with my affiliate, Active Adventures. They're a fantastic tour company that I cannot more highly recommend. And remember, you can have that exclusive discount code ATA, ATA 200 to save $200 off of your Croatia or any Active Adventure tour. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. At no additional cost, you'll also be helping to support the program, which is very much appreciated. You can always reach out to me at kit@activetraveladventures.com if you forget the promo code, or just to let me know what you're up to, where you want to go, what you want me to cover on the show. The show is for you. And if you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate a 5-star review. I love the much needed feedback, as well as it helps others decide whether or not this program would be something they should check out. I very much appreciate it. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on!